Hello there, welcome to Cloud with Chris weekly vlog number 33. You're with me, Chris Reddington, and here we talk about all things cloud. Now, thank you folks for joining. This, I guess, is the first weekly vlog in a couple of weeks, because last week we had quite a different stream, didn't we? We were doing some community gaming, community updates. And I think we worked out a rhythm in the end. I know it may have been a little bit haphazard or feeling like that at times, but hopefully you enjoyed it. We've definitely got a format to work with, and we'll be doing that once a month. So looking forward to the next one in September. So if you are interested in that, by the way, maybe it's an early plug, go ahead and drop me a message over on Twitter, and I can invite you to a Discord channel where we're coordinating all of these game community type events. So drop me a message, drop me a line, and let me know. But of course, today we are not doing that today. We are back to the traditional standard kind of updates. We're going to be talking Azure blogs, Azure updates, Azure DevOps updates, GitHub updates, and some Cloud with Chris news as well. You know the deal. If these updates are useful to you, please give us a like. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. Please share on, quite frankly, because, you know, the way that I think a lot of this has kept on growing and working is word of mouth, and I'm really thankful for all the support. So please keep that going. Really do appreciate it, as it's a good, encouraging sign to do more. So with that, let's just jump across and do some updates, I think. So we're going to start off first with the Azure blog, as I mentioned there. So there's 3 updates on the Azure blog this week. The first one is about accelerating your app modernization with containers. And it talks through some changes, some additions that have been made to some of the functionality in the tooling to convert your existing applications into containers, and they talk about how Azure Migrate can actually go and help with some of that as well. You know, there's a nice diagram here explaining the kind of the process, some enhancements here. They talk about how you can go and deal with that as well, using some of these other services as well, not just the actual container hosting, but Key Vault, for example, to manage your secrets, etc., and all of those things that we're used to in terms of good practices. So really great to see the investment there, because I think containers obviously brings a great opportunity to standardize and bring some consistency on how we deploy our applications. So great update. Take a look at that if you are on that journey. And yes, Simon, all good here. Thank you. Has been a good weekend. I somehow managed to, in case anyone hasn't seen on Twitter, I somehow managed to obtain a PlayStation 5. So been playing a little bit of Spider-Man earlier today, which has been a bit of fun as well. And hello, Dean, I believe that'll be on Cloud Management Community. Good evening. Thank you for joining. So next update then we have from the Azure blog is going to be one on Azure DDoS protection, which was really, really interesting, actually. I saw this one earlier in the week, and what they talk about in here is all of the trends that they've seen across the first 2 quarters of this year, of 2021, and they talk about where they saw hotspots, the types of attacks that they were seeing, for example, how that trended over time. Really, really fascinating blog post just to get an understanding of the types of attacks, of the types of vectors that people are trying to use, how long some of these attacks last. Just really, really interesting. Now, I'm not really the world's networking expert. I will hold my hands up to that. But even so, I just find it fascinating just for awareness to understand where some of those threat actors are right now and what those potential threats are. So if you're in the security world, or even if you're more focused on the networking space as well, certainly an interesting blog post to go and follow up with there. So that, again, is on the Azure blog. And then finally, a really, really pleasing update that I was just... I mentioned a moment ago, I'm not a networking person, but even so, I was excited to see this, is you can now, in preview, go and resize your Azure virtual networks that are peered. So that is a great update there to the platform, to the core platform. It seems like there are some considerations that you need to make in terms of syncing with those other virtual networks that you're peered with as well. I'll be honest, I haven't really delved into the depths of this one and understanding how this preview works. That's still on my list of things to read through. But the fact that this is even now a possibility with the preview, it was a limitation that has, of course, been there for quite some time. But now it seems like that is slightly being lifted and there's now ways that we can start working around that, which is absolutely brilliant. And I look forward to playing with that one, hopefully in the upcoming week, if not the next few weeks. Right, in terms of Azure updates this week, let's go from the 9th of August, which would have been last week. I won't cover the last 2 weeks because there'll be tons to go and update on. But you know the deal, we're just going to rattle through these really quickly. In the chat, feel free to jump out if there's anything you want to dive into in particular. But public preview of Azure Percept Development Kit July software update is available. Generally available, introducing global disaster recovery via Azure Site Recovery. That is another big update, which I think I mentioned maybe last week or the week before. But ultimately, or maybe I tweeted that one out actually. Ultimately, what that one is saying is you used to be restricted in terms of when you were replicating between regions, which regions you could replicate to. Again, that restriction has been lifted. There's an acknowledgement that actually there are a lot of global organizations that are going to want to replicate and do that kind of disaster recovery scenario across broader sets of regions. So now that has been lifted. Generally available, the Azure VPN client for Mac OS. Public preview, containerizing apps and migrate to AKS and Azure App Service with Azure Migrate. We just talked about that a moment ago. Great update. Discovery and assessment for ASP.NET web apps with Azure Migrate as well. So think about your IIS web apps. And there's also an interesting one that you can now use a private link as well with that. Azure VM extension upgrade capabilities are now generally available. So if you're using virtual machine extensions for either Azure Virtual Machines or Virtual Machine scale sets, you may know that previously you had to manually update those extensions yourself. Well, now if the extension is capable of it and has auto upgrade capability, that is now something that can be used and can actually be enabled. So less management on yourself, which is always good. A great update that happened this week, and we'll talk more about it a bit later, is GitHub code spaces went generally available. So anyone that is using GitHub Teams, so that kind of SKU, if you like, or that offering from GitHub, or GitHub Enterprise Cloud, great news. You are now able to use GitHub code spaces in your organization. I've been using code spaces, it feels like, for at least a year now. I genuinely can't remember how long, but it's been quite a while. Big fan of it. I think it's a great service, and I can't wait for a lot more people to try it out and just be blown away at how easy it is to spin up a container, get going, developing, making some changes, getting rid of that container then, and just having those on-the-fly development environments is really awesome. Generally available, Azure Sphere OS version 21.08 expected on August the 25th. Azure Machine Learning public preview announcements, August 2021. We'll dive into that here. So this one, there's a few updates. Cross-location compute, which allows the user to create clusters in locations that are different from locations of the workspace. So think about things like maximizing idle capacity allocation, space efficiency, etc. Utilizing VM SKUs that are only available in a specific region. You don't want to be pinned to that same region if you've got restrictions there, for example, on the type of compute that you can use. So a great update there. Hierarchical time series was another update that came out there in public preview, as well as compute instance auto start and auto shutdown for your Azure Machine Learning workloads as well. So some great cost saving features and tips there as well. And then finally, some Azure IoT Central new and updated features for July as well. So if you're using IoT Central, check out the Azure Updates page because it will have you covered on what is coming out. Next up then, the Azure DevOps blog. So first up, an Azure Fun Bites episode. This one is, of course, with Jay Gordon, who does all of the Azure Fun Bites episodes, but with Alex Frankel, who is coming in as the guest. Alex is awesome. I've had some great discussions with Alex, with some of the work that I've been doing. I did a fair bit of work in the ARM template space in my previous roles, so I worked with him and the team quite closely. And they talk about Bicep, which again, I just think is a really, really awesome step forward for the platform. A lot of people know, right, that ARM templates are a little bit challenging to adopt just because of the nature of, I think, the language and having to pick up JSON and try and understand that. It wasn't the most intuitive language to try and pick up, quite frankly, and was quite verbose. Bicep is worlds apart from that. Very, very different in terms of simplicity, in terms of understanding. And if you've used Terraform or HashiCorp language to write your Terraform scripts, I think there's a lot of similarities in terms of the simplicity and in terms of how the two languages work. So, of course, there are always differences. It is a separate language, but, you know, I think the benefit of Bicep is it's still actually really in the background decompiles back into that ARM template JSON that you're used to. So that isn't going anywhere. That doesn't change at all. But we've got a nice friendly language that we can develop those templates in. And it's just an awesome update. It makes it a lot easier to go and author those templates. Some great tooling out there as well in VS Code. So if you haven't checked that out, I thoroughly encourage you to watch this video, because I'm sure they will talk all about the VS Code extension that's there and some of the features and functionality that are introduced with the new language there. Azure DevOps Server, if you are using 2020.1 or 2020.0 or 2019.1, 2019.01 as well, there is a new patch for you to go and look at. So fixing a build definition UI error, change browsing history, fixing issues with email delivery jobs for some work item types. So good to go and check that one out and keep up to date with your patches, because, of course, we all need to keep up to date with our patches. Next up, April Edwards did a blog post on the Azure DevOps blog talking all about developer best practices, structuring your repository for static web apps. So, much like April, I am a big fan of static web apps. And I think a lot of people sometimes think that it's static content. There's not a lot that I really need to think about from a security perspective, but actually there is a lot you need to think about, quite frankly. And one of the things April mentions here in this blog post is her deployment approach actually uploads all of the files from the root folder, which includes her YAML file. Now, fortunately, her YAML file doesn't have secrets in, but what if it did? Obviously, that's not something you want to expose to the world, right? So talking about some of these considerations that you may want to go and make. So again, talks through then one of these Microsoft Learn modules that exists around Azure Static Web Apps as well. Super big fan of Azure Static Web Apps and Microsoft Learn. I actually passed the Power Apps Fundamentals and the Power App Developer exams this week, and a lot of my kind of skilling around that was, quite frankly, through Microsoft Learn. So a big shout out to the Microsoft Learn team, the folks who write that content. It's a mix of people across Microsoft, I think, but thank you for that, because I certainly got benefit from that, and I'm sure there'll be no doubt many others who do as well. So thank you. And good evening, Rob Heyman. And yes, Bicep is absolutely awesome. I've written some Bicep modules, I think, for Cloud with Chris. I'm actually now standardizing on Terraform, but just as a bit of an exercise to compare and contrast the two, I wrote some, and it was just so easy. The VS Code extension made it just simple to author and edit. I was fortunately one of those few who maybe understood ARM templates, because I did quite a bit of work with them, the JSON ones. But yeah, Bicep is so much easier to work with. And then we got a bit of a variety then from the Azure DevOps community in terms of updates this week. So automating Umbraco package build and deployments with Nuke Build, Git Vision and Azure DevOps from Matt Brailsford. Use SourceGraph with Azure DevOps repos. AAD Ops, operationalization of Azure AD conditional access with Thomas Naunheim. Windows 10 Image Series Part 5 with Niels Koch. Consume artifacts from a remote DevOps project pipeline with Marcel. How to create project and set up repository for the project in Azure DevOps with Srinath Pega. So a bit of variety there. We've got some Abraco, we've got some Azure repos with SourceGraph, we've got some Windows infrastructure type stuff there as well. Artifacts in a remote DevOps project pipeline. Do you know the deal? I've spoken about it many times on this channel. DevOps is for everyone. It's not just an app dev concept. We're seeing it pop up everywhere. We've been talking about Bicep already and Terraform, infrastructure as code concepts. I've mentioned on the channel previous other times about things like source controlling your data science workbooks or your database schemas. You know, if you're a data person, you can absolutely use DevOps principles and build and release your schema changes, etc. And of course, as we're all used to with app dev is easy. It's stateless. We just go ahead and release our changes. Of course, I'm being flippant about that, but typically it's where we've done DevOps, right? So it feels like the easy one of those three areas. So again, it's for everyone. So if there's any areas where you'd love to see more DevOps content, let me know, because I am starting to think about what I want to push and make some really focused series around in 2022. So if you've got ideas, hit me up, because I've already got a few ideas that I'm toying with actually. So it'd be good to get some external feedback, let's say. So this is a point to take a quick swig of tea as we go ahead and jump into the GitHub update. So in terms of GitHub, if you are a student and you're following along with the weekly vlogs, firstly, welcome and thank you. I'm glad you're spending some of your time away from studying to come and listen to me. Might just be worth you being aware that GitHub's August 2021 Campus Experts applications are now open. So if you are a GitHub fan, you're a student and you're thinking, right, I want to build a community around GitHub on campus, that might be a program for you. So go ahead, take a look at that. Next up, GitHub Codespaces. We've talked about it already. It is now generally available. It is awesome. I've been using it for some time. I'm a big fan of it. What really struck me, and I've said this a few times in these weekly vlogs, is I love these updates, whether it's from Azure, whether it's on GitHub, even companies like Monzo, who I happen to use for one of my bank accounts, these engineering-focused blog posts. And there is a super blog post from Corey Wilkerson, who I believe leads GitHub Codespaces. And what he writes about in this post is how the GitHub team overall, and I'm not just talking like, you know, the GitHub Codespaces team or GitHub Actions, but GitHub as an entire engineering organization are now standardizing on using GitHub Codespaces to go and develop and build and test, you know, in that inner iterative loop, how they actually go and build github.com. Now, think about that for a moment. I do a talk about GitHub and its kind of past and why I'm excited about GitHub and everything that is going on in the GitHub world. But the GitHub Codespace is almost 14 years old. Rails, which GitHub is built on, I worked with Rails quite some time ago. Rails was only 2 years old at that point in time. AWS was 1 year old. Azure and Google did not officially, GCP, of course Google existed, but Azure and GCP did not yet exist. So actually in code terms, that's actually quite an old code base. So when you start thinking about that development environment, some of the things that had to be done along the way to make that environment work on developer machines and whatnot, can that really run in a container? Can that really run in a cloud instance where I'm running VS Code? And the answer is an absolute yes. And they talk about the changes that they needed to make to their scripts to go and actually build some of that infrastructure. How they took, I think it was the build times down from 45 minutes, I think, initially to bootstrap the environment in Codespaces, down below, I think, about 10 seconds. Really fascinating. Talking about the different size of machines that they're using to develop github.com as well, and all of these different things. And then just quite frankly, actually some of the reticence that was there, as there is in any organization, right, about some kind of cultural change, a tooling change, some sweeping change, actually it was quite well adopted, and you can see some of the feedback in that blog post as well. So really, really interesting blog post. If you're thinking about code spaces or you're somewhere along that journey, highly encourage you to take a look at that, because again, another great write-up there from GitHub from an engineering perspective. Okay, so next up then, this one caught my eye a little bit. Excuse me. So this one caught my eye a little bit here. A bit education focused, but as I mentioned, I'm starting to plan my kind of 2022 Cloud with Chris. What are the things I'm going after? And to give a little bit of insight into my thinking, I think I've done quite a bit of having guests on the show. And that's absolutely going to continue. I love interacting with the community and bringing some great people on to talk. But it's taken away a bit of my focus from the cloud drops that I was working on, so those bite-sized content. I want to do a bit more kind of hands-on stuff as well, you know, kind of live coding, live building stuff. And I mentioned before about actually seeing stuff built, seeing things fail along the way, because sometimes we always see those presentations where it's the end product and everything all works nice and shiny. But I want to work on something a bit raw and through a bit of a series. And that's something I've been thinking about. And this post actually was really interesting from GitHub about how they're using Visual Studio Code through GitHub Classroom, or rather, and GitHub Classroom to bring teaching and learning together. And it's something I've been thinking, is this something I could use where there are certain blog posts that I'm writing that could maybe be almost classroom kind of material? So could it be something like, hey, here's how I went ahead and deployed my Cloud with Chris integration platform, for example. These are the decisions I made along the way. Here's the code base. Here you can go and learn from these things and why some of the decisions I made along the way in an interactive kind of environment. It's a really kind of out there idea right now, and I've got no idea if it could work. But it's something I'm thinking about, which is why this one really stood out to me actually as a post. So watch this space. Maybe something will come of it, maybe something won't come of it. And obviously I'm always happy to collaborate with people and would love to collaborate with people. So if you've got ideas, something we could work on together, let me know, because I think that could be really fun and cool. And then finally, in terms of changes in GitHub in July from the changelog, there were lots of changes, from security advisories, dependency graphs, Dependabot alerts, Dependabot security updates, and a lot of supply chain features for the Go community as well. We're not going to go and have a chance to go through all of those, so I would go ahead and take a look at that blog post, because there was a lot updated in GitHub over that last month. Good. So now on to Cloud with Chris updates for this week. In terms of updates, what has happened? Well, first off, we want to look back at what's happened rather than what's coming up. Last week, a week ago right now, in fact, we had weekly vlog number 32, and it was a little different than weekly vlog, and I'm not sure I would really call it a weekly technology vlog, to be honest. It was a community session. It was a gaming session. We played Among Us, and I was really pleased with it. I think we had a great community there, a great mix of people from different backgrounds across the globe, and it worked well. Don't get me wrong, in the beginning there were teething issues like, I guess, the rhythm of the game, us all trying to have a technical discussion and then all talking about the game. Absolutely know that that caused it to feel a bit disjointed in the beginning, but as time went on, we figured out how to kind of make it work, just have technology in the voice chat, game chat in the game, and actually we found a format that works. So we're going to be doing another one of those. I believe it's going to be the first Sunday of September, which I think will be Sunday, September the 5th, if I remember rightly. So if you're interested, once again, a big shout out. Please do drop me a message on Twitter, LinkedIn, Carrier Pigeon, however you are connected with me, please drop me a message. We'd love to have you along, and the more the merrier, and get a bit of a rotation, because that's going to become a monthly slot on the channel. But But also a big thank you to everyone who joins. I know a few people had to dash out a bit earlier on. A few people stayed for like the full 2.5 or 3 hours that we played, which was awesome. Thank you so much. It was honestly so much fun, and I'm really looking forward to the next ones and seeing where we take it and what happens with it, because I think we can definitely make something interesting out of this. And again, it's a community thing, so really, really great. So thank you, everyone. Next up, I wrote a blog post then on Wednesday, not a technical one really, but really some reflections from me on why other people should get involved in the technical community. Talking about my experience, the journey that kind of took me to where I am right now, the failures along the way, the challenges along the way, quite frankly, because whilst it kind of started in 2020, I had many failed attempts from back in 2015, 16, 17, 18. It takes a while to get into a rhythm. It takes some time to bring people along when you're building a community. It takes that time. And I just wanted to share about my journey, share a little bit that actually failure is okay. We've all been somewhere along the way that we've had to deal with a bit of failure, but it's how we learn from that, how we grow and how we keep on going and really propel ourselves forward. Also talk about why I originally started as well, and what my motivations, my drivers were, and what I've got out of it, and just some of the frankly great people that I get to meet. You know, some of you are in the chat already talking away, so thank you for joining. It really is appreciated that you spend some of your precious Sunday evening hours just listening to me ramble on about some updates, but also just really encourages me that we have such an awesome community as well that want to give back and learn from each other. So big thank you, and looking forward to carrying on and working with you all. And then on Friday had another guest on the show. So had we had a session on AKS, Agic, App Gateway Ingress Controller, that is, and KubeNet with David Frappard. So great session from David there. Really got into the nuts and bolts of that, understanding some of the challenges that have been had along the way from David's experience, and really great session. So if you are on your Kubernetes journey, you're thinking about App Gateway Ingress Controller, and maybe you're even thinking about using KubeNet for that, because typically I guess there's the choice of KubeNet or Azure CNI. If you're thinking of KubeNet, well, this is absolutely the video for you. So you want to go ahead and check that one out. Now, in terms of the content coming up this week, we have some awesome content, actually. It was a really fun time recording both of these sessions. So on Wednesday, we have got a session with developer Steve Kuchin, and yes, Developer Steve is Developer Steve's name. More on that in the episode if you're intrigued, so go ahead, take a look at that. That's one of the first things that we talk about, so that'll be coming out on Wednesday. And what we talk about is something really important to all of us, right? Is security within our application code, within our software, and how you can find software vulnerabilities before, quite frankly, they find you, because they will make a way to find you if you're not on top of them. What we talk about is some of his experience and research with PHP and some of the work that he's done with Sneak as well. So awesome session, really great fun, and I think we're going to try to get Developer Steve back on to talk about some other areas as well. But again, more on that in the session. I won't spoil that, so go ahead and listen for that one on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we have a good friend, a good name coming back and joining us. We have good old Carl Cook coming to discuss my Cloud with Chris integration platform, actually. So we're going to be talking all about that, some of the decisions I made, why I made those decisions, and how I architected my new platform, and the journey I'm on, because it's absolutely not finished. There's still more work to be done, but you can see the foundations that I've made and where I'm kind of taking this. And ultimately, it's the basis of how I am scheduling all my social media posts. So if you wonder how I'm kind of posting and keeping up to date with Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc., with all of the Azure DevOps, GitHub content, Cloud with Chris content, I can assure you I am not 100% not on Twitter and all of those social media platforms 100% of my time. Some of my posts are obviously in real time and naturally doing those, but some of my posts are scheduled in advance as well, so I talk through how I do that. So if you're intrigued, join us on Thursday. That one will be live. We'll be kicking off at 8 p.m. for that one, and that'll be a lot of fun. And then on Friday, so 3:30 as normal on a Friday, release of a video is going to be a really, really interesting, actually, session with Asanka Asingye. And what we talk about is a decentralized reference architecture for cloud native applications. And what he talks about is this concept of a cell-based architecture. That is something that he came up with as a concept. And when I initially got the blurb for the session and I accepted it for Cloud with Chris, I thought cell as in like cellular networks and thinking of those hexagonal kind of slots from a cell design perspective. But actually the analogy is really to do with biology and really to do with cells and like organisms and whatnot. And honestly, the analogy holds really well, and it was a really great discussion. It was a really, really interesting one and really made me think about actually through some of these cloud architectures. And you'll know if you've listened to my channel for a while that actually that's an area of interest for me. So check that one out on Friday. It's a very interesting session actually, and Asanka will be joining I think in a few weeks time once again for another session, so watch out for that one as well. And that's it. I think there are of course a few extra talks coming up over the coming weeks, so there is one coming up, in fact, in a couple of weeks' time with the Microsoft Cloud and Client Management community, where I talk about how GitHub helps me build and deploy a podcast or a blog site. I'm then doing one in late September for .NET Not, talking about requirements, design patterns, cloud architecture, oh my. And then I might be a bit premature in announcing this next one, but I've been asked. I haven't seen it announced yet, but you heard it here first, folks, is I will be journeying to the homeland. I'll be presenting in person. I'm super, super excited for this. And I'm going to be giving a really interesting session, actually. At least I think so. I might be biased, given it's my session and it's a topic I'm interested about. Maybe it's using Azure Arc to run your application services on premises or in any cloud. So yes, you've probably heard about Azure Arc for infrastructure or data. I'm going to be talking about Azure Arc for application services that got launched in preview at Microsoft Build earlier this year. So giving a bit of insight into the power behind it, why I think it's going to be truly awesome, and how you kind of get all of that set up and what it looks like in the portal and how it kind of works. So that'll be a fun one. So the Welsh Azure user group are an awesome user group. If you are from Wales and you're tuning in and listening in, definitely check them out. If you're not from Wales and you're tuning in and listening in, definitely check them out, because they are virtual and they are, of course, open to having folks joining them as well. Given we're talking about talks, a bit of an advanced warning that we have got the Azure Thames Valley Lightning talks coming up as well on the 28th of September. I think we've got all the Lightning slots filled now, but we are looking for speakers throughout every single talk that we do moving forward. So we want to try and have at least one Lightning talk before the main speaker for the evening, if that makes sense, so a full-length talk. So if you're interested and you want to kind of dip your toe in the water from community speaking and public speaking, sessionize.com/Azure-Thames-Valley, I want to say. If not, drop me a message. I can send you the link. We'd love to see a bit more diversity of the types of content we're getting in, the types of people that we're getting speaking about it, the backgrounds that people are from, because we are working in this virtual world right now, so we have that flexibility. So we'd love to have you come along and join us. And otherwise, I will of course be writing a couple of blog posts. I will at least have one, because I'm nearly done with one. Maybe a couple. We'll see how this week goes in terms of recordings, etc. I've got a fair bit of recording going on this week, but I will do my utmost to get that content out. But that is it for this week, folks. That is the weekly update. So Next week we will be back. We will be doing another game stream. We will this time be doing a bit of Sea of Thieves. So if you are a Sea of Thieves player and you want to come along and join, well, once again, go ahead, drop a message on Twitter, LinkedIn, Carrier Pigeon, however you want to get in touch with me, please do. Then I can invite you to the Discord channel. You can accept and say you want to come along and join on that one. But otherwise, as is the case, please like, please subscribe, please hit the notification bell. If you've liked this update, please tell a friend, because that friend might watch and they might like, subscribe and hit the notification bell, or they may tell another friend. You know, this is kind of how it works, right? So we'd love that extra support, but greatly appreciate everything that you've been doing and listening in here in the chat as well here, folks. So as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and until next week, bye for now.